Everyone, it is an immense talks with another incredible panel that joining us. Welcome. For those that have been following our stories and our conversation, thank you so much. We've had such a strong following, so much incredible feedback, and I can't be more grateful. So if you are a travel advisor, an IC, a restaurant owner, if you're a hotelier, an architect, in media, thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching live, or maybe it's a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon, or you're joining us with friends on a happy hour during the week, more power to you. Thank you again for taking the time to join us. Last week, we had an amazing talk. It was our record-breaking viewership with over 5,000 views. So thank you so much for that. And I'm thrilled to be here for another incredible chat. The objective, if you haven't joined us before, is these TL Talks have one goal, which is to spread positive energy. It is, I think, what we are all missing, what we all need. It's our lifeline. And so every week, the idea is to bring around friends, partners, leaders of the industry to talk about a subject that we believe is relevant, but always offering guidance, offering motivation, in order to inspire and just give us a little fresh breath of positive energy. So that's why we're here. If you don't know me, my name is Tina Lira. I am the founder of TL Portfolio. We are a sales, marketing, and PR representation company with offices throughout North and South America, and a fabulous team of 17 women that have been with me throughout the pandemic. So thank you again. I'm going to go ahead and introduce this amazing panel. And I'm gonna start with Jesús Parrilla. Jesús is the principal of Luxury Frontiers. He is Chilean. And I think many of you that might not be familiar with Luxury Frontiers, which is a cutting edge design, multidisciplinary business that's really adaptable and modern. And I think modern more not for the design style, but really for the way that they're envisioning construction in a very sustainable way. And he was also the former CEO of Explora. So if you're into this type of hospitality, it is a brand that we all know and we all love. So Jesús, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to your contribution.
Very well, thank you. A pleasure to be here.
Thank you. We have also, I'm going to leave ladies for last because there's a lady here called Portia and she steals the show. I mean, as you can see, it's like I have to leave her for last. Otherwise, we all lose out. So here we go. So we have Tyler LaMotte, who is the Chief Brand Officer of Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, which is in itself an amazing destination. But Tyler has a fantastic story, different than many of us in the hospitality or like myself that was born as a professional into the industry, and I live and breathe it. Tyler has a very interesting background. He was a professional snowboarder, and after that successful career, he joined an array of incredible companies such as Salomon, Adidas, Patagonia, Apple, which is already in itself amazing. And then he went on to join Jackson Hole. So it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, and we're looking forward to hearing your perspective from a brand approach and also from an outsider insider kind of point of view. So thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
And
it's great to be here.
Last but not least, we have Portia joining us. Portia may be somebody that not everybody knows. Portia Hart, she's the co-founder of Green Apple Foundation. She's an entrepreneur. She's a hotel owner. She's English, but she resides in Colombia. And she has an incredible story. After 8 years in Monaco, she found herself deciding to embark on a new journey and going to Colombia. And after a very interesting story, opened a resort, a boutique hotel, and found herself deciding to do so in an island that had no other business, where there was very little. And she made not only a successful business out of it, but she created opportunity for the entire community by being sustainable, by creating a recycling and stimulating also people to think about entrepreneurship. So it's a pleasure to have the three of you here. I think each one brings a completely different approach to our theme, which is how do you preserve while at the same time promote a destination. So thank you again for coming. And I'll start with the same question for all of you. And maybe Portia, I'll start with you since I left you last, which is two questions. The first one is, if you had to give an elevator pitch approach to your story, who are you? In a very, just so that everybody can learn who you are. And then the second question is, if I were to meet you a year from now and ask you, Portia, how was 2020? What would be your answer?
Two questions I probably have never asked myself, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and in such brilliant and slightly intimidating company. I'd say I am English, but one secret that I didn't let out earlier is that my mother was born in Trinidad and Tobago in 1947 and actually arrived in the UK as part of the Windrush generation. So grew up in a really poor part of the world. And I think after living in Europe for 30 years, I had this kind of inner calling to go and really make sure that I wasn't kind of cocooning myself in a bubble of privilege. And arriving in Colombia and arriving specifically in Tierra Bomba, which is the island where I have my hotel, was definitely an eye-opener for me. And since being there, I have totally transformed my story, my elevator pitch. My priorities in life have changed. And I really feel as though what I'm trying to share with the world is that if we all focused a little bit less on monetary wealth and a little bit more on wealth of different kinds, such as contributing to communities, contributing to society, contributing to the protection of the environment, we could all actually be much wealthier without worrying too much about what's in the bank account. And with regards to 2020, the Corona coaster, it's a tough one. So it does depend on what day of the week you ask me. But I'd say more than anything else, it's been an opportunity to really reconsider why I do what I do, how I do it, how I could do it better, and how much more I have to learn. And it's given me the opportunity to connect with people like you, with people like Jesus and Tyler, and really make an effort to look at my future and the future of my businesses and our foundation in a much more sophisticated and contributive way. So it's probably the worst thing that has ever happened to me, and also will be the best thing that has ever happened to me.
I think that's a great way to looking at it. And that's what we can all hope for, right? If we make the best out of now, then it will be the best thing that ever happened to all of us. Jesus, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're going to answer next year.
Well, I think, you need to put things into perspective. As bad as 2020 has been for many of us, I cannot help but realize how fortunate, our generation has been. I look back at my parents and my grandparents, going through the Spanish Civil War, seeing friends and family that have to go through world wars. And what we are experiencing today is part of the growing pain of society, of civilization. So I think, it's not a big deal when you put things into perspective. We need to kind of buckle down and be able to push forward. But I think also this crisis is helping me, or has helped me, kind of refocus and reset, and also realize that I need to pursue with more conviction the things that I'm passionate about: the environment, conservation, and social justice. And I think, this time, on a lockdown mode has put things into perspective, and you need to really embrace life for what it is, and you need to really make a difference. And I think, the crisis has been good to realize that everything around you is much more important than you. We are so interconnected, and we need to help one another make this world a better place.
So
Okay.
true. You know, one of the words that come strong to me when I hear you is to be grateful, for sure. I think a lot of us we've stopped and realized how grateful we have to be. And I think it's, in a way, it's also humbled everybody. You know, you've kind of like a little bit more humble, a little bit more appreciative. And that's one of the big silver linings to you know, look at and appreciate everything we have. Tyler, how's life in Jackson Hole?
Life in Jackson Hole is good. It's great to be close to nature, and that proximity to the outdoors has been, I can tell you, necessary medicine for all of us, and all of us coming to visit Jackson this summer. And obviously we have our eye on winter, which is right in front of us, as the leaves are already starting to turn, and the temperatures will be freezing overnight starting next week. So it's already happening and it's already here. But just to kind of go back to your beginning question, I'll just, a little bit about my background, and thank you so much for the invitation to be on this panel and with phenomenal people that are here as well. Just a bit about my background, and thanks for that introduction. Clearly, chasing the dream of trying to become an athlete and a pro snowboarder, that really was something that I'm so grateful for, that unlocked really every single opportunity in my life. One of the biggest things that has been probably the biggest gift, given all the brands I work for, is really all of the international travel and all the people that I've been able to meet and learn from, and really becoming globally minded and culturally aware has been something that's just been unprecedented, to recognize how much our communities and our humanity are connected on so many different levels. And that's been just so important. And as I've gotten older, from chasing a dream as a passion as an athlete to really looking at how my passions have evolved, and really looking at, I've always been passionate about the environment as a young child, and still that looks and progresses, but really not just being passionate, how do I turn my passion into advocacy? And how do I do something about it? And how do I engage in civic duties? So I've been able to serve on different boards and whatnot, doing lots of policy and lobbying in Washington, D.C. with our lawmakers, whether that be for climate change or public land use and access. And I think that part is, being a human being, you have to take action and be responsible and try to drive positive outcomes and change. And I think that that's been a whole nother facet of my career that's really different when you start to think about values, and then also start to think about purpose, and then try to think about that in your professional, but also your personal life, and live that every single day. And that's what led me to go work for companies like Patagonia and Jackson Hole, just companies that have very, very strong purpose, that lead with values that can drive change. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about that. When I think about 2020, one of our purpose here at Jackson Hole is, how do we connect people closer to nature? And again, I'm so lucky to be here and surrounded by that, but we have so many people that come that want to visit and exactly do that. So how do we create the future stewards of the outdoors? And even though we're going through a pandemic, what we saw this summer is this strong desire for people to leave their urban environments and connect and go back to nature. And that aspect is just become really powerful. The challenge is, clearly in a pandemic, we need to make sure that we're doing it safely for our employees and also for our guests. So if you ask me next year, I would hopefully be able to respond and say, we did just that. We allowed people to recreate, we allowed people to connect. And as I say, to connect with nature is to want to protect it. So hopefully more people that experience it will want to protect it in the future. And the outcome, even though this pandemic is difficult, will be that there's a deeper connection overall to the outdoors and to nature, which ultimately will result in more passion and willingness to drive sustainability.
Oh, goosebumps to that. I mean, that was just beautifully said. And it's so true. And it's so beautiful to see that in every single TL talk. And it doesn't matter what the overall theme is, every single time we have an underlining message about sustainability and appreciating nature and appreciating the environment and the local community, and so that's phenomenal. And I think that's a fantastic silver lining. And I have to apologize in advance. My connection this talk is probably the most challenging I've had. This is, as I mentioned to the panelists, it's a price I have to pay for being in paradise. I am in the Dominican Republic. I am in a fabulous villa in Casa de Campo, which is everything that Tyler just said. It's connecting with nature. It's being in the Caribbean. If you hear noises, I apologize. There's these boats. There's these beautiful boats going by. So it's not even car or, sirens like in New York. So I will be happy to give a tour later on of this villa. But to not distract too much from the subject, I wanted to start with Jesus. Because this is when we first spoke, and I was telling you the idea of the theme of this talk, and I said, it's a challenge. How do you preserve and at the same time promote a destination? And I was telling you a few themes, and when I hit this one, you went, yes, that's something that speaks to me. I'm passionate about it. I want to be on that one. And I said, great. So I'd love for you to share with us, what does it mean to you? Can you talk a little bit about what does this challenge or opportunity look like in your eyes?
Well, I think there is usually misconception between the idea of promoting a destination and the negative effects associated with doing that. And I think, there are some examples, some very good examples out there that give us hope in terms of how to manage destinations, not only from the preservation standpoint, but also from the restoration or regeneration standpoint. Over the last couple of years, I've been very fortunate to travel to several places, including Costa Rica, okay? And for me, Costa Rica has grown in my heart and soul as a really a country that inspires people who are in the tourism industry to really push the boundaries on how to bring to the table preservation, restoration, and responsible tourism. Most people don't know, or maybe a lot of people know, but Costa Rica back in the 70s and 80s was one of the countries in Latin America that suffered the highest deforestation rate. Then the government put in place certain policies, certain incentives and mechanisms, and brought civil society to the table, say, we need to do something about it. And these policies allow the country to reclaim forests by 60%, something that was depleted, which is really remarkable. I mean, Costa Rica is a small country, okay, but very, very wealthy in terms of, or rich in terms of biodiversity. And I think the great and interesting thing about Costa Rica is that they didn't stop promoting the destination. Okay, they restoring the land, preserving the land came in hand with educating their citizens, educating the travel trade, educating the travelers about coming to this place, being responsible, observing nature, getting immersed in nature, but in a very, very responsible way. And they have been able to reclaim a lot of land. About a quarter of the country today are part of national. Not only push tourism to become sustainable, but this is like a mass movement in terms of environmental consciousness. And I think, when you look about Costa Rica, they are all over the news in terms of promoting the destination. Pura Vida, come and explore this. So the two things going hand in hand because they're using the resources to take care of their environment. And one of the things too, going with this preservation and how you promote the destinations, unfortunately, the pandemic, we need to look at some places where they have been very driven by conservation, like Africa. The fact they have not had any tourism dollars have put a lot of these communities at risk. So I think, you can promote a destination, you can bring tourism, and when you have the right policies and you have the right framework, it works beautifully. And I think, again, Costa Rica is a wonderful example for, to illustrate this point. Okay.
It's so interesting to look at, and I think that it's phenomenal when you have the backing of government, for sure, and it comes from above, and then it brings everybody together. And some of us, speaking from being a Brazilian, kind of feel like if that's the ideal situation, but if that's not the case, it's also interesting to look at how do we bring about change, even if you're a small business, like in Portia's case, or a destination within a huge nation, like in Tyler's case, and also what you're doing in Luxury Frontiers. So I think it's a phenomenal example, and South Africa in general is an amazing destination for its positioning and how everybody kind of thinks if you're going there, you have the environment first and foremost, that you need to take care of it. Hopefully we could have more destinations that would be able to change the mentality of their traveler when you think about, where they're going. Tyler, I wanted to jump in and ask you, you talked about, having worked with after these incredible brands, something that you talk about is companies with a purpose, right? And you described that your past and current employers as sustainable business, which are values-led and purpose-led companies, which is fantastic. What does that exactly mean? And how do you make a company or a destination value purpose-led if they're not? This is an opportunity in a way. The world stopped for us to clean shop, fix. If you don't have a sustainability policy, this is the time to do it. And so tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure, absolutely. I think every company has a purpose, whether they know it or not. And I think it's also looking at and evaluating your strengths and opportunities to pivot with a strong purpose. When I say a strong purpose, really what that means is a powerful brand purpose sets out how your brand intends to change the world for better. And how are you, as you're setting a new purpose, looking at those ways and opportunities to drive that type of transformation? And its role really is to unite guests and culture alike. It's really a statement of belief, of hope, or of pursuit. And it's also a main reason for you to exist beyond just solely making a profit. So many companies are just wired about revenue. But what is it that you're actually doing to try to change the world and make the world better, not just for your guests, but for your employees? And that's what really results in how you become an enduring and lasting brand. Like, for example, when I think of Patagonia, for instance, and their purpose is very lofty, but it's to save the home planet. You can't think of anything more broad and wide than that. And that's just so ambitious and so lofty, but very clear. And it touches every single facet of their business. And so a brand purpose, when your whole company is united behind this transformation, you can achieve incredible things. And when I think of values and the beauty of a purpose-driven company, and specifically a family-owned company, you can really lead with values beyond just leading with solely making a profit. So putting your values first, what do you stand for? What do you believe? And then how does that weave through your culture, whether it's sustainability, whether it's going to be on integrity, whether it's going to be guest service. All of those are values that align back into your overall purpose. But again, your reason for doing it is not just making a profit. It's either to enhance the guest experience, to embrace sustainability, to not think about your business in the near term. And this is another thing I love about Patagonia. They look at their business over the next 100 years. It's not just the next 3-year business plan. They want to stay in business for as long as they possibly can. And that means you're just thinking very different. You're thinking very big picture. When I think of values, those are the behaviors that really drive your company. Those are the things that come to a brand, and they define that desired culture that the brand wants to have. And so one of the first things we did at Jackson Hole when I came is we did a huge purpose-driven exercise. We looked at brand purpose, we looked at our positioning, and we looked at our values, and really just trying to create better articulation, really trying to align the whole organization across every single level of the business, and then take it outward and communicate to the guests, communicate to your community, communicate to your industry on what makes you different and what makes you a values-led, purpose-driven organization.
It's amazing, and I think it's phenomenal. What Jackson Hole Mountain Resort has done, because in the last year, I understand you've converted to 100% wind power, and it's a big undertaking. I think you reduced your carbon footprint by like 67% or something. And I think one of the incredible things is when I asked you about that in our previous conversation, and I said, well, what does that look like on a P&L? So here's me being archaic, right? Like I'm totally not up with times, but that was one of my first questions. How does that look on the P&L? Does it pay out? And you said no, it's actually more expensive, but it's the right thing to do, which is like, duh, yes, great answer. That's the point, right? And it makes a lot of sense. We had Eric Resnick, who's the CEO of KSL Capital, an incredible investors. And they were saying, when somebody, a company like them look at an investment, do they ever really think about the social impact, really? Because it doesn't fit on the P&L. And he said exactly what you said. He says, if you, like us, are looking at long-term, we plan to be here for 30, 40, 50 years, then of course we look at that. Otherwise, we won't be around, right? So it's a very interesting and very well put concept.
And one point to add just real quick to that, Tina, is that even though it was more expensive, by bringing that energy source into our community, it also allowed the community to take advantage of having that source available so everybody else could reduce their carbon footprint. So it's just going in these rings and these circles to get bigger and wider to drive overall change within your whole community. Like, say, with Costa Rica, but even our little town of Jackson, where our airport runs on wind, our hospital runs on wind, the town of Jackson now runs on wind. Yeah. So small moves can big results.
Fantastic. No, very, very encouraging, and kudos to you. Portia, you have an amazing story. I think it's very inspirational. After 8 years in Monaco, working for a yacht brokerage and a management company, you started as a PA with 15 staff members. You left 8 years later as a director with over 100 staff. And then you moved to Colombia, eventually opening a boutique resort on an island where nobody visited. There was no local business. And I'd love to hear from you. How did you make it flourish? And, it's so interesting to imagine in itself how opening a hotel in the middle of nowhere is already, a big task. But you did so by encouraging circular economy, by creating jobs with sustainability, by encouraging entrepreneurship. You started a foundation. You diverted 90 tons of glass or organic waste to from landfills. You converted 1,700 liters of cooking oil into biofuel. You started a scheme of teaching women into how to convert glass into souvenirs. I mean, I can go on, and it's just amazing. So it seems, if you have a big company and people think, well, how do I include a little bit of sustainability? Or sometimes I'm too small to do that. Well, you did it all. You opened a small hotel, and then you changed the island. How? Like, how would it help? Help me do that, please.
Well, I would say the first thing is that actually I did none of those things. So one of probably the most valuable pieces of advice that I got from the man who started the yacht brokerage company where I spent 8 years was to always hire people that are better at what you're going to do than you are at doing it yourself. And so that was really probably my biggest piece of good fortune in my life, was to get that advice in my 20s. And so every time we bring somebody on, it's always somebody that's better at what they're going to do than I am. My chef cooks better than I do, and my manager is better at admin than I am. And everyone in my company, basically I'm pretty useless.
Right.
And so really what we've achieved as a team, I think, has been because I was taught from a very young professional age not to let ego get in the way. And I should say that we didn't set out to do all of those things. So I'm not ashamed to say this, when we opened, my goal, my purpose, and I'm so sorry, Tyler, was I wanted to serve good food on a beach, drink nice rosé, and listen to good music. And it was as simple and as basic as that. And it was really, as we realized what was happening around us, I thought, well, you can't sit on a beach and drink rosé if the guy a kilometer down the road can't afford to put shoes on his children's feet. So, okay, let's keep the rosé going, but let's also make sure that we're employing local people. And each iteration of the development of sustainability came because of decisions like that. If you'd have asked me at the beginning, do you want to be an eco hotel? I would have said, no, it's too scary, it's too hard, we're too small, it's too expensive. And these are all things that I have said, and they're all things that I continue to hear from other small entrepreneurs. What I've learned is that it isn't difficult, it isn't expensive. And actually, I'm going to contradict Tyler. I think not only does it work because it's the right thing to do, but everything we've done, I think, has actually affected our bottom line in a positive way. So during lockdown, as an example, because from the very beginning, we've hired local people and we've really encouraged our staff to develop a relationship with our clients and to not be afraid of showing their personality and to have conversations with them. Clients who had been to Blue Apple would send virtual tips to our team while they were at home on unpaid leave. And we were able to raise $10,000 for our staff, which kept food on the table, kept people healthy and well during the time that we were closed. That is a financial advantage of an ethos that we have as a company. We didn't set about thinking when things go wrong, we want clients to give us money. But because of the way we operate, our clients feel a connection with us. And I think, as a consumer now, I am so much more likely when I next go skiing or when I next want to go to an American resort to go to Jackson because it's aligned with my values. And so I think while sometimes you make an investment and it's maybe expensive and your P&L that year looks a bit different, it could be an investment for the future. So I don't think that sustainability and doing the right thing always has to be more expensive. And I'm here to say, we started a company with no VC backing, with no private investment. We did it with our own savings and they weren't big, but we did it one step at a time. And every day we just woke up and asked ourselves, how could we do it a bit better today? And we're still doing it. I am so far from being where I should be. Every day we can get better, but it's all about taking the shame away. It's all about making it seem more accessible so that people don't go, oh, I could never recycle because, it's so hard, so I'm going to recycle nothing. Like, okay, just put your glass to one side, just do that. Don't worry about doing anything else. And we've actually managed to get 15 other restaurants and hotels in Cartagena to do exactly that since we started the foundation. And I just think every little helps. We aren't all fortunate enough to have Costa Rica as a government. And so I think sometimes it has to come from the private sector and it has to come from the small guy. And if, 20 small guys are doing it, then maybe a few medium-sized guys will do it. And then maybe the big guys will do it. And then you have companies like Patagonia on the top of it. And that's how I think you start change. I think everybody wakes up and says, what can I contribute today? And it doesn't matter how small it is. So I'm embarrassed to be here around these guys, but I also think it is important for small people and small companies to tell their stories too, and to hear other small companies saying you can do more than you think.
Yeah, no, you're a beacon of hope. It's so inspiring to hear what you've done and what you've accomplished. And I think one of the things you say, which I think is so cool, is that you don't have to be perfect, right? You just have to try a little better every day. If you do a little bit better, that's already a big step towards something. And just before I jump on to the next question, I wanted you to briefly talk about profit because we spoke about it earlier, and feel free, guys, to jump in here. But profit as we know it traditionally is all about the bottom line, and it talks about your return in a monetary form. And you see it a little differently. So when I was living in the south of France, one of my favorite places to have lunch every now and again as a treat, it was a restaurant called the Colombe d'Or. And the owners of the Colombe d'Or used to let painters leave drawings or paintings instead of money because the owner loved art. And these guys weren't well known. And, sometimes they left like a sketch on a napkin, and sometimes they would send something a few weeks later that was, a massive piece. And the Colombe d'Or now holds the largest private collection of contemporary art in the world. And those artists were Picasso, Chagall, Matisse, and they were not motivated by financial profits. And that was something that I kind of kept with me in the back of my mind. And when we opened Blue Apple and Townhouse, which are our two small hotels, we started this artist in residency scheme, and it works on the premise of alternative currency. So we say not everyone is cash rich, but some people have something to give. So we actually let people come and stay at the hotels. And if they can give something to us as a business, to our staff, to our community, or to our guests, then they can stay and we'll give them what we have, which is a roof over their heads and food to eat. And it has been the most amazing thing that we've done. I mean, our foundation, Green Apple, was actually born out of an artist residency. We had a girl come from Canada who had been on the team that developed the municipal Toronto recycling scheme. And she actually helped us put in place the procedures that would allow us to start our recycling foundation. And amazing.
As I've had each one of those experiences, I've really learned, why do we still, when we say profits, And when we talk about revenue and when we talk about wealth and success, why are we always referring only to money? And so I now am moving towards, and I would actually really like to formalize this, and I think we might be going down the B Corporation route, to measure success through a variety of metrics, of which wealth is one, but of which contribution to community, regeneration of local environment, general well-being, the way you care for your staff, should all be other metrics. And so you could have a year where you maybe made less financial profits, but you made an enormous amount of social profit or environmental profit. And I think if we all started to talk like that, as individuals and as businesses, we would probably discover that some of us are much poorer than we think we are, and some of us are much wealthier. And you know, everyone on this call except for me is like in some kind of natural paradise right now. And I see it when I see my clients come on holiday and they're lying on the beach and they're by a pool and they say, God, you know, you're so lucky because you can do this all year. And I'm like, so could you. You don't have to live in central London. And
yeah, just for people
away.
to know, you're in London. You're in London right now. You're not in Costa Rica.
Yes.
In Colombia.
This is not the Caribbean. But I think that redefining the concept of wealth and allowing ourselves to feel successful because we live a lifestyle that we enjoy, or because we contribute to a community, or because we play a part in the betterment of the world or the protection of our future and our future generations, that should make us feel wealthy too. And I think if we have millions in the bank and we do nothing to contribute, then we should feel poor. And we should be discussed, you know, in the Fortune 500 or in the Times Rich list. They should not list people who are just monetarily wealthy, because that is not real wealth.
No,
I agree. And I think that it does makes you happy. Go ahead, Jesus.
No, I fully agree. You know, when I left Explora a number of years ago, I joined a startup called SmartRep that happens to be a big corporation, and I encourage you to look into it, Portia, because I think the values instilled in the big corps are rather incredible. You know, the early years were a struggle. We're trying to get the business going, and basically our purpose of the business was to insert small artisans and people in the biggest tourism destinations in Chile, to insert them in the tourism value chain, providing goods and services. We didn't want them to be left out, because usually the small guys were left out. So the purpose of the company was to engage, you know, the hotel companies and ask them to work with them. We never, from day one, we never looked at making money. Obviously, you know, businesses need to make money to continue to drive on that purpose. But on a daily basis, what we measure is impact. How many people we have been able to help, how many people we have been able to educate, how many people we have been able to insert in the tourism value chain. And to us, that's where the profit is more and more companies, you know, your strong financial statement. It is your purpose as an organization, your purpose as a business manager. And sometimes we tend to forget. I'm a business owner as well, but sometimes we tend to forget how powerful we are in the roles and the positions to change the world or to change our environment. So when I look at Portia, this is fantastic. You know, I know you had James McBride in one of the talks. Yes. With Nihi. It's really, really incredible what they're doing there in Indonesia. There are so many people out there that, to me, those are the heroes, you know, the people that have to really get up in the morning and their only concern is, how can I make the world a better place? How can I positively impact our community? And I think, you know, we come to a point where making money is just not enough. Okay, it's about sharing the wealth, spreading the wealth, and making sure that we collectively help one another prosper. And I think, you know, tourism is a great platform to achieve that. You know?
So true. Now more than ever, as we're living one of the biggest crises of our existence for those living currently in history. I think it's so interesting that it doesn't matter how much money you have, how wealthy you are. There's so many people looking, how do I, get past my anguish or my frustration or my fear, my loneliness, or all of these very heavy and difficult feelings that we're going through. And people often ask me, Tina, how can you be always so positive? Like, come on, every week you have this. And I say, you know why? The best solution to all those feelings is help somebody. Go out there, help, be generous, and you will have a nourishment of positive energy that is so beyond any payment, any monetary reward, that it's so much more fulfilling. And the people that are suffering right now, it doesn't, it's not like, as they say, the virus doesn't judge if you have money or not, and neither does depression. So the fact that if you can be generous with whatever you have, your time, your energy, or whatever it is, it will come back 50 times. And I think that has a lot to do with just happiness in general, which is what we all look for at the end of the day.
Yes.
Tyler, I wanted to go back to you a little bit. When we spoke about the challenge of promoting and protecting, in a way, or preserving, we talked a little bit about the importance of adjusting your message. And you as a brand expert and everything that you've had gone through in your career, what key considerations should one keep in mind when aiming to promote and preserve? How do you connect with your audience?
One of the biggest ways we connect with our audience is through, content and storytelling. I think for every brand, you have a story to tell, and make sure that message cuts through. Every single platform needs to be really curated responsibly. The other one is really looking at and understanding the guest. And that's really important, specifically knowing that, we always need to make sure that we're building a relationship with our future audience. And we know that millennials and Generation Z want brands to be transparent about where they stand on social and environmental issues. And so by being transparent and letting them know the actions that we're taking, that we are leading with purpose, that we are pivoting in certain ways as it relates to sustainability and incorporating that across our organization, but not just only how it is that we operate. And again, this is for every business. And I think we kind of touched upon this in the other conversations, but really looking at, who are your suppliers? Who are your vendors? How are you challenging them based off of their sustainability, whether it's a vehicle brand partner, or whether it's a beverage supplier, or whether it's those that you're working with that launder, essentially any of your fabrics and materials for your rooms. Are they using bleach, or are they using an environmental solution, or those types of things where we can create transparency across the entire operation has been really important. And as Portia said, that the more that you know what it is that a company is doing, the more that you will be willing to want to engage in that company. And for us, our responsibility, and specifically in the world of everyone that touches hospitality related to snow, we have an inherent responsibility to protect that. And so without choosing sustainable solutions like renewable energy, it won't be around for future generations. So we want to make sure that people know what it is that we're doing, and also meet the guest where they are. For an example, the campaign we're running right now is called Return to the Wild. And that message is because people want to connect with nature. And so we want to make sure that we're meeting them at that right place where they are. And then they learn about us, they learn about sustainability, they learn about all the things that we're doing. And then that's how we build a deeper relationship and connection with our guest.
And I think you gave a great example when we were talking, which I think can be applied to any company, especially those in the hospitality. It's when you talked about storytelling, you talked about getting them to really know you. And the more, it's like a person, right? The more you open up about yourself, the more exposed you are, the more people connect and have empathy and really bond with you. And you talked about having a day in the life of Jackson Hole and get in the backstage of it. And can you talk a little bit, because I think that in a way you're exposing yourself, you're showing your vulnerability because you're going back, you're backstage. But I think it allows people to really make that connection, and so easy to be done for anybody that's a hotelier, a travel advisor. It's interesting. Why not show the back office? Bring me into your life, right?
Right. And it's the people that run all of our businesses and operations. And oftentimes in hospitality and in our ski resort business, you don't really see all the magic that happens behind the scenes and have those personal connections, and also the difficulty that it is to be able to run a certain business. And so we have a piece of content that will be coming out, which essentially will show really 24 hours of operation and what it takes, from when ski patrol shows up at 6 a.m. and they're throwing bombs to do avalanche mitigation, to the groomers that run all night long missions in the morning, to lift off, to daycare, all of these things that people don't think about. Whole orchestra in terms of how the music comes together, that I think people will appreciate, because they'll understand your entire business and ensure that the guest has a experience.
And I have to say, I'm a little biased here. I've been going to Jackson for 8 years, if not more. And my daughter learned, you mentioned all those, imageries. I can see it, I can hear it, I can smell it, I can visualize it. It's like, oh, I can't wait to be back. It is a magical, magical place. And it's part of my life and part of my family's life. So congratulations. You guys do an amazing, amazing job.
If I can just jump in. No, just because as a skier, one of the things that has concerned me recently is, is it environmentally ethical to ski? And I think that this talk, promote and protect, is partly also talking about how you reassure travelers that they can still continue to visit a place or to do an activity that they love, because you as a brand, as a company, as an operator, are taking the money that they're spending and putting it towards the protection of that. Has the accusation thrown at it that it suffers from over tourism? I think tourists will say, I really want to see Venice, but how can I see Venice if I can't see Venice without destroying Venice? And I think as operators within destinations, one of the things that we can do is to reframe the narrative. So in my eyes, there's not really any such thing as over tourism. I think what we see is unimaginative tourism and tourism that hasn't got the right motivation. So again, if somebody wants to go to Jackson because, they want to take a selfie or see a famous person, and your social media is playing into that narrative, then you could end up with over tourism. But if we as operators in these amazing places tell a different story, which is you can come to Cartagena and you can see the UNESCO heritage site of the old city, but then you can stay on an island where 15,000 people live and they need jobs. And so you can stay on that island instead of staying in the historic city. Or you can go to Venice and you can see it in a different way, and you don't have to just follow this trail. I think then we can really begin to kind of solve the problem of over-tourism by just managing tourists better, telling our stories better, encouraging people to come to us for the right reasons, and also reassuring people that they can come, and that by visiting a place, you are not necessarily destroying it.
Yeah, no, and that's so important. And I think one of the components in order for us to have a more sustainable and, for us to continue to set the bar higher, has to do a lot with design as well. And I'd love for Jesus to touch upon that, because you guys, when I talk about Luxury Frontiers, you've done such an incredible job, and you've won so many awards for helping hotel operations expand their inventory and look at growth, so promote it and grow it, but without having such a heavy impact, right? So on a lighter construction. Can you just elaborate on that? How have you done that?
Yeah, I think it's very important to keep in mind, that design can take many different avenues, and obviously it is what you like. I mean, there is no something that is better than other things. And I think we are very proud of our team, because there is a common thread, and there is something that bound us as a team, that we love nature, we love the outdoors. And having that love and passion for the outdoors has made us as a team very sensitive to leaving a low impact or trace on the environment. We take a heart, our environmental footprint. And those things have carried through our design process. As architects, designers, and engineers, we have a strong desire to explore the natural and cultural environment, but in a responsible, low impact way. And that spirit translates into an architectural design that gives rise to low impact, flexible, semi-permanent, dismountable, and movable structures for the modern outdoor traveler that seeks comfort, but wants to be immersed in nature. Okay, so that's very, very important. And obviously our inspiration in terms of design and in terms of the architectural structures is rooted in Africa, and we are now exporting it to other parts of the world. So basically, design is quite important, but it has to be something that doesn't leave a footprint, something that is light on earth, and something that you can remove, and 10 years from now, you will not see any traces. So again, this design and this concept comes from this passion to really have a minimal impact on the environment, but also allowing people to really enjoy nature. Because I think, as Tyler said, we have also come to realize during this pandemic that we need to be out there in touch with nature. We need nature therapy. I think the best cure to being confined and the best cure to mental illnesses is to be in touch with nature. And we humans in the last, have turned our backs to nature. We do everything possible that goes against nature, destroying. And so we need to, hopefully this will give us the opportunity to embrace and go back to nature, and also respect and regenerate and rewild and integrate and be just one element of nature, not the element. Everything kind of revolves around us, and we need to just take a different approach, that we are just one element of a greater picture.
You say something that I think is very nice, and I'm probably going to mess it up because I didn't write it down, but something that, we don't own the land owns us, right?
Correct.
And
yeah.
Is that how you say it? I think it's a powerful.
Yeah, I think, I've written extensively, I have written extensively about how we deal with the environment, particularly from the standpoint of tourism, how we deal with local communities, and how the local communities have this ancestral knowledge that they don't destroy their land. They work with the land because they depend on the land. And I don't know of any business, that goes against their asset, that burns their building, or they burn their equipment. Businesses don't do that. They take care of their assets, and yet sometimes we don't take care of our environment, and that's our house, our home, Mother Earth. Okay, yeah. So we don't loan them. Yeah.
It's very well put. And I have a question here for Portia, which I know I'm being a bit cheeky by asking this, but as a sustainable, appreciating sustainability and creating everything that you've done, which is so remarkable, there is always, I'm going to call it a love-hate a relationship with the cruise line and sustainability. Because there seem to be at the opposite of this conversation. And I wanted to ask you, Portia, and I think your video went, but I think you're still with us. If you were made CEO of one of the biggest cruise lines today, what measures would you put in place?
I am still here, although there's a question to make me want to leap into the nearest abyss.
Jump under the table.
Yeah, I think my first question would be, what did I do to deserve this? But I know the cruise industry is a difficult one, and obviously I come from small hotels, and I tend to avoid big business because I find it difficult to work out how do you operate something on that scale. I mean, I don't know how many cabins a big cruise ship could have, like 3,000 cabins or something. How do you operate on that scale and still do it well and do it kindly? And I guess without having an enormously in-depth knowledge of the cruise industry, but obviously with nearly a decade of experience working in luxury yachting, the first thing I would do would be to call my ex-boss and be like, okay, what are you guys doing in yachting that I need to bring over to the cruise industry? Because I think that while I know there are deep issues around an economy that allows people to amass the kind of wealth necessary to build or buy 130-meter private yachts, one of the advantages that we do see come out of that industry is that these guys invest so heavily in technology, because they need these yachts to enable them to continue their normal lives even when they are in the Antarctic. And so we've seen, satellite communications, even a lot of Wi-Fi systems. A lot of the R&D that goes into that is actually funded through private yachting. And I know that currently the yachting industry is heavily focused because, of course, there are so many new billionaires that are coming from West Coast America, who do seem to be more concerned with environmental welfare than they are with partying in Saint-Tropez. And we are seeing them invest heavily in clean energy supplies for yachts. So there are yachts being developed now that might be able to cruise for somewhere between 6 to 12 hours without using their fuel supply. So just to be able to do that on batteries generated by wind or by solar energy. And I think if I suddenly found myself in the position where I was responsible for the cruise industry, I would obviously be prepared to take a hit on my bottom line, because I would immediately say our only goal is not pure financial profit. But I would look to an industry like yachting, and I would see what technologies I could use. And one of the things that we see again in luxury yachting is new yachts being equipped with data collection systems, with laboratories, with tenders that can be loaned free of charge to marine biologists and to scientists. And when you look at the cruise industry, one thing that they are doing is traveling all over the world. And one of the things that I've learned in my foray into sustainability is how important data collection is. And so to be able to use those cruise ships to collect marine information, and then to use that data to come up with public policy, not just for the cruise industry, but to understand better the impact of all human activity on the seas, would be invaluable. And I think if the cruise industry could begin to do things that are useful, then it would be harder to say, let's just sink all the cruise ships. So I would invest in new technologies. I would dedicate resource to data collection. I would host marine biologists and scientists in a couple of cabins on every trip that we were running for free. And I would make sure that in all the ports we went, we had connection with local people and with local organizations. And I would make sure that we were doing something positive. As an inhabitant of Cartagena, and we do receive cruise ships, we do not see much value. We get, people come into the town and maybe they spend £5 on a coffee, but there is not an enormous amount of value. They aren't impacting our communities. They aren't helping to protect our environment. I would not be sad to see the cruise industry disappear. And this is as someone working in tourism. So I would try to change that. I would try to say, how can I make the hospitality industry in Cartagena feel happy that my ships are coming here? And how can I make the local community in Cartagena feel happy that my ships are coming here?
And it's a beautiful message, and that's the bottom line. No, that's it. That's the bottom line. If the industry feels happy about you, that's because it's a win-win. It's that simple, really, right? If you were genuinely happy that the cruise ship was there, it's because you have a cycle going on. And I think that I just wanted to ask you that because there are simpler things that can be done with a very simple definition and objectives that makes it a little bit easier to digest, I think. And that's beautifully said. If every place that receives you, the locals genuinely feel happy and they're grateful because you're nourishing them, then that's a reason to exist.
It's something, yeah. If you can have some kind of positive impact, I suppose.
Sure.
And I'm really sorry if there's anyone from the cruise industry on this call.
No,
it is just my opinion.
No. And I've had, very important people in the cruise industry, and I think it's a huge business. It's not going to go anywhere. We don't want it to go anywhere. It employs so many people, and right now we're at the risk of almost 50% of our industry globally being unemployed. So we need them in an economic way. However, why not just try to send these little subtle messages that we don't want them to go away, but maybe rethink a few things. And just as we're ending here, I like to always end on the similar note. And for those that have already been listening to the RTL talks, you're very familiar with this, that if everybody were to forget everything we've all talked about, which I think has been so rich in content, what would be your final message? What would you like people to think about over the weekend? What little seeds you want to plant in their brains for them to keep chewing on and maybe, changing their perception a little bit? And Jesus, I'll start with you.
Wow. I think we need to be sensitive to our buying habits. I think we need to privilege and favor companies that are responsible both socially and economically with their communities. I think we need to empower them so that other companies follow. So I think we need to change our buying habits and favor those companies that are there with a purpose.
Very well said. I actually have to thank Juliet Kinsman, who introduced me to Portia, but she said something on a TL talk that she joined, which was exactly what you're saying. She says, think about every time you spent $1, every purchase you make sure that there's a choice there and support the right companies and send your money to the right communities and businesses and people and so forth, right? And that's, I think, the same message, which is very, very important. Tyler, I'm going to end with Portia. So tell us a little bit about your closing message.
Yeah, I would just say that small moves can drive big results over time. And don't be afraid to take the initiative to look at ways to reduce your carbon footprints, your emissions, drive more sustainability across your organization. And also do an audit, look at things that you're currently doing and just say, hey, what can we do differently to be able to drive some positive change throughout the organization, and involve your staff, get them involved in these efforts so they feel like they're empowered and part of the solution.
So true. I keep driving back to past talks. Wendy Burke, amazing woman, CEO of Cadence Travel. She explained how she does it, but she incentivizes every business, and she does it on her own, to get every member of your staff to dedicate 10% of their time to innovation. And when she told me that before even the talk, I thought, that's interesting. Let me try it out. And I implemented that into my company, and it's been generating amazing results. So empowering and having everybody have a voice to think differently and to create is so impactful. It's so important. It doesn't only make them feel important, but it actually generates amazing initiatives. It's so great. Portia, are you with us? I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, I'm still here, and I don't know what's happened to my video, why it's disappeared. I'm really pleased that you told us to come up with 2 things to say, because one of the other speakers, but amazingly they managed to steal both. So I was going to say, you have more power than you know in your pocket, and every time you spend money, you can change the world. So thanks, Jesus. And then I was going to say that no matter how small the thing that you do is, it's still better than doing nothing. So you shouldn't feel guilty, and you should just make any small change. So thanks, Tyler. So now I'm on the spot. But I would say in that case, have a very honest conversation with yourself about what wealth really means to you. And if you could consider redefining it, because you might discover that although since you've been 5 years old, it's been a dream to have $2 million in your bank account by the time you hit 50, that isn't actually making you feel wealthy or privileged or happy. And it might be worth considering if there are other things that make you feel like a millionaire in your life, which could be your family, the good feeling you get when you go to sleep at night, knowing that one of your members of staff just told you that their daughter graduated from university thanks to the job that they've had through your business. Whether it is the restaurant owner who called you up to say that he just had one of his best nights of sales, and half the people who went said that they'd heard about him because they read it on a foundation website where he was recycling his glass. Redefine what makes you feel fulfilled. And don't be afraid to tell people that you feel wealthy in a non-monetary sense.
And that's beautifully put. And I have to say, for me, I get so chuffed. It's so nice. some people are not going to believe it because they'll probably think that we all know each other forever. But this panel, they didn't know each other. And I told them right from the beginning, I said, I put you guys together and I'm going to tell you, you guys are going to hit it off. And now they're like ending each other's sentences in a question of 60 minutes. It's so funny. It's hilarious. So it's been a tremendous pleasure. It's always my favorite day of the week. It comes to Wednesdays and it's such a big job. And I think, why do I do this? This is crazy. And then I know that I'm going to get to this Friday and think, oh, thank God I did it. It's so great. It feels wonderful. I hope that everybody that is listening enjoyed. I hope the panelists had fun. That's the idea. If you enjoyed it, please share it because our goal is to get to as many people as possible with this positive energy and maybe planting a little seed of sustainability, awareness, and change. So I wish you all a great weekend. I'm going to do something I haven't done before, which is I'm going to take my camera and I'm going to just show you a little bit of where I am, which is this amazing villa. This is called Casa de Campo. Any place more perfect to spend a quarantine or feel safe and feel pampered. Look at this place. I mean, it is pure joy. And I can't thank the team at Casa de Campo enough. It's phenomenal. I am I'm being very, and it is, I think, one of the reasons why places like this that have incredible service, attention to detail, they make you feel truly at home, and everybody takes care, and they're so well versed with all of the procedures and everything that it almost feels like, we're in a different world. And so I've taken the step. We started traveling. I was in Miami last week. We're in the DR. And it's not something for everybody. It's not, I always say the time to travel is the time that's right for you. So there is no pressure in getting out there. But if you do have a little feeling, a little desire, remember that by stepping out, you're moving microeconomies. You're investing, you're pushing that curve and that cycle a little faster. So please encourage you to, we had friends from Robin Fox, I think, from New York that went to do a stay vacation in a hotel in the city. That's moving something. She's not ready to go out too far, but she went within home. So let's try to get our industry back if you're ready. If you're not, take your time. Have a great weekend. Tyler, thank you so much. Portia, Jesus, gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Warm kisses, tight hug. Have a great weekend, guys.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Take
care.
Bye.
Travel, it's a people business.
Type of professional occupation where the demand has survived.
It is the responsibility for everyone who's on that team to drive home all of those qualities.
Just keep doing and stay completely optimistic. Things are turning, and I know there's only good things in store and great things to come.
The first time I interviewed with the head of America, she said, Tina, we know retail. You know who buys us. You know how to take care of him, how to speak it to him.